I took a spot from someone that could have been a future doctor. Zach Highley, why I quit medicine to become a consultant.
I want to talk about a couple of things. I want to talk about how I feel a year after leaving medicine, the different options that were actually available to me and how I found those options, why I chose consulting in the end, and what my life is like now living in New York City, living as a consultant, and what my plans are for the future.
I love that he's always in nature in so many of his videos. As nature is always aesthetic, nature never looks dated, it's timeless.
So even before medical school, I feel like I always had this itch of kind of wanting to do something different. And I think that's where this channel came from. And I think that's where leaving medicine.
I can relate to that. For those who don't know, I also left medicine in plastic surgery residency. And I also started things when I was also in med school, just like Zach.
And maybe it's why I am a huge, huge weirdo.
And I'm also a huge weirdo as well.
I always thought this thing, whatever this thing was, would be something that is combined with medicine. So maybe I would do it while I was practicing as an attending. Maybe I would do this thing after 10 or 20 years practicing and attending. I never in my wildest dreams thought I would go through 10 years of trying and figuring out just to leave.
Yeah, and there are so many different avenues for those who do want to be both in medicine and have some other entrepreneurial or other creative pursuits outside of medicine. And for me, I thought it was going to be in medical devices. That's where I first started while in med school. I started BlueLink, a biomedical incubator modeled after Stanford's biodesign. And you essentially took students or graduate students from business, medicine, and engineering, put them on these interdisciplinary teams and help them create healthcare startups. And I thought that I would be creating my own healthcare startup. So there are a lot of different avenues to consider. Zach and I both converged on creating YouTube videos, and many medical trainees and doctors do that, but there are many other avenues as well, consulting and medical devices just being two of many.
So before medical school, I had a lot of these contacts in these different areas like pharma, consulting, VC, all these kind of things. Clinical medicine wasn't where my curiosity was. It wasn't where my drive was. It wasn't where my ambitions were. And this kind of pushed me down into a deep, dark hole of I guess I just have to be the person that clocks in, clocks out, does what I need to help people, and then kind of just lives a life like this.
I think a lot of medical trainees feel that, and you feel that very strongly when you're actually in residency, when you are working these long hours. And the two main ways that people deal with that are, number one, they endure, they push through, and they know that when they get out the other side as an attending, they will have some more flexibility, not full flexibility as you do in entrepreneurship, but some additional flexibility versus when you're in residency. And alternatively, you leave and you go all in on entrepreneurship as Zach and I did.
I also knew that if I don't have a plan, if I don't know what I'm actually going to be doing next, it stresses me out immensely, like crazy. So, and this is something I need to work on. For me, when I make a decision, it's magical because then I can start to align everything I do, my tactics, my habits, my life, everything around just this decision. So the decision now was I'm leaving medicine.
Now, what Zach was saying here and earlier is that he loves certainty. As humans, we all love certainty. And one thing that I think helps many of us, myself included, this is a work in progress for me, is trying to be more and more comfortable with uncertainty because life is uncertain, life is messy, life is unpredictable, and there are unexpected challenges that will come your way, like it or not. So we all gravitate toward certainty and stability. That is natural for humans, but embracing the uncertainty and the chaos, if you will, I think makes for greater comfort, greater happiness, less anxiety, and probably happier lives. Again, work in progress for me as well.
And so it became, what am I going to do next? I had something I could follow now that I was leaving. I had a plan. Bam. Everything was sorted. Everything was great. Counter bam. This unearths a whole new world of things, right? Because if I'm not going to practice medicine, what the heck am I going to do? So this is, keep in mind, this is 2 months into internal medicine residency. I figured out that I'm going to leave. And now I actually have to figure out what the heck I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And this is hard.
2 months is very early to know.
Because in medicine and every medical school, everything is laid out for you. You know you're going to go to undergrad. You know you're going to take the pre-med courses. And you know after that, you're going to go to medical school. You're going to have residency. You're going to have an attending job. Of course, it's hard, right, when you're actually there. But in the grand scheme of things, in the life organization, in the risk category, it's actually pretty easy because you know what's going to happen. You know what the output is going to be. And you know there's really not much risk. You're going to have this salary. You're going to have this job. And of course, that's what's appealing to many people.
And that's also why you see so many people who enter medicine, they tend to cluster around, not always, but they tend to cluster around risk-averse personality types because there's very little risk. The main risk is not being able to proceed and not being able to get in or go on to the next stage. But if you have the work ethic, you put in the time, you are approaching your studying properly with our, we have the study strategies playlist on Medical Insiders as an example. You're being very tactful with your application, focusing on your narrative, your actual positioning and such, then it's a very safe path. You follow the steps laid in front of you. It is a long path and there are many steps involved and many tests and things like that. And it's not a perfect path, but if you follow that path, congratulations, you're now going to be an attending physician who is making, on the low end, $250,000 a year, $250K, and on the high end, $750K if you go into something like neurosurgery. And of course, you can go higher than that if you go into an aesthetic, cash-based practice as a plastic surgeon, things like that. So a lot of certainty, not a ton of risk in the grand scheme of things compared to other professions.
So the risk is essentially that you do this thing that everyone says is the right thing, that it's correct, but you go through 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and you realize all of a sudden that this thing actually isn't your thing. Sure, it's maybe all these people that are going along this path, but it's really not your thing. And I think this is a major error and a major fallacy that not enough people think about, right? Because we're all different.
It's the human condition, right? We are so focused on the more immediate, the more uncomfortable, the most dangerous risks, at least from our perception, even though the risk of being in a career long-term misaligned is incredibly risky, as Zach is talking about right here.
I'm not really contributing that much to medicine. Sure, maybe I'll be a good enough doctor, I'll do good things, but am I really taking it to that top 1%, that top 1% of the top 1%? And not selfishly, right? Because I want to be the best and, change the world. Sure, I do. And I think I've had my ego checked a little bit since that last video I posted, right? But the paradox is when you're so selfish, you're unselfish.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. So this is something that I also mentioned in my early video on why I quit plastic surgery residency, which you can find linked below. The selfish thing to do is to optimize for your own fulfillment, happiness, life trajectory in that way, right? Paradoxically, by focusing on that, you will find that by helping and leaving an impact on others, that feeds into your own sense of fulfillment, purpose, and happiness. So the selfish thing to do is to actually be selfless and help others and have an impact. And feeling like that cog in a wheel, which isn't Zach's words, but that sense of feeling like you're just another doctor, you're clocking in, clocking out, you're not really contributing to the larger medicine, you're just one doctor working with one patient at a time. That still is very meaningful. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But what Zach is pointing to is the idea that what if you want something more than that? If you want to help additional people? There are many doctors who are practicing as clinicians and then do other things on the side. And there are various ways that we may get time to talk about later in this video. But one of the other avenues is through entrepreneurship.
But the biggest mistake that can happen, right? The biggest, I think, mistake that I was making is I was doing these things because other people thought it was the thing I was meant to be doing. And then what happens is I was in the median, I was in the middle.
You have to make sure you're doing medicine for the right reasons and for yourself and not for other people. Very important point, because what generally happens, and we see this all the time, and I've actually had many calls with various med students, residents, and even some attending physicians who talk about this misalignment of doing medicine because they felt like they were supposed to or they needed to make certain people in their lives happy, but it wasn't really aligned with them. And then they feel this deep misalignment and they're at this crossroads where they need to figure out, do they quit or what can they do? And it's oftentimes not just as simple as walking away from residency and leaning in on your YouTube channel, because people have families, responsibilities, etc. They don't have a social media following that they can just create a business from. And that's why with videos on this channel and on Medical Insiders, I think medicine actually is a fantastic career, but it's not perfect and it's not for everyone. I've said this many times. If there are 100 pre-meds, I think 75 of them are going to be very happy as a doctor, but I think 25 of them would probably be better suited doing something else. And your job is to decide, if you are a pre-med, are you in that 75 or in that 25?
But he actually decided from the very beginning, right, this amazing person, that he wasn't going to do residency. He wasn't going to do the standard path. And he decided in this second third year of medical school, right? That he was just going to leave immediately for a consulting company. This was absolutely insane. How do you not go to residency?
You know, before YouTube, social media really took off, that was one of, possibly might even still be one of the most common paths, which is that after med school, you go straight into consulting, or from residency, as Zach did, you go straight into consulting. Very common path. And when I was in med school and when I was in plastic surgery residency, I also knew people from my school, people at various programs where I was rotating, who also left either med school or residency to do consulting.
That it's something ridiculous, like 70 or 80% of Stanford MD, MBA students never go into residency. And Wharton might be something around 30, 40%. And it just was mind-blowing to me. And the even more mind-blowing thing is that when I had this discussion with these advisors, these teachers, these things like that at the school I went to, they didn't mention it. And they, in fact, I'm not going to say any names, right? But they, in fact, lied to me about what the next possibilities and steps could be.
It was hard for me to read that text, but it looks like still the majority of them are completing residency, and just a smaller number of them are looking at medicine as their primary form of practice. I think he went to like Tufts or Temple, right, for med school. I also think that the percentage there of people that have more of a, you know, entrepreneurial MD, MBA path, things like that, might be different than the stats that he was quoting from, I think, Wharton and Harvard. So that might also skew things, I'm guessing.
I spoke to an advisor one day. I remember walking into her office, and I was a scared and unsure medical student. And I said to her, what is this industry thing? What is consulting? What is venture capital? What are all these things? We've never had a lecture on this. We've never spoken to anyone in class about this. The standard thing is to go to residency. And she said, you hear about this, but it's not really true. Absolutely no one from, I'm not going to say the school, but you can figure it out. Absolutely no one from this medical school doesn't go on to residency. Every single person goes on to residency, and they don't do anything in industry. And I said, okay, so it's like a media thing. It's an outlier. It's not something that people do.
Yeah, that's definitely not true. That's strange that he was told that.
And this kind of hit me in a weird way. I said, what? I can't believe that these people would lie to me. I can't believe that these people are actually doing these different things that I had no idea about. And medical students, nurses, anyone, any healthcare professional, anyone in a professional school, lawyers even, I'm sure there are no conversations on entrepreneurship, industry, and how to actually leave to enter these things. Sure, maybe there's some kind of digital technology or creating your own research study or trying your own project, right? But this is always on the side.
Yeah, good point. Really good point. Because it's such a safe path. All the teachings are just about staying on this safe path. And there are people that are interested in deviating. And sure, entrepreneurship is messy, but you could have classes, resources, etc., to teach people about entrepreneurship or alternative career options after medical school or after residency. It's a good point.
This is never the thing you can do. You'll never not go to residency. And I saw this in a lot of the comments on my first year or on when I left medicine, right? A lot of the people were saying, Zach, you took away a spot from someone. You are awful. How could you not possibly do this? You're selling out, all these kind of things. Maybe there's some truth to it, but I think a lot of it actually comes from not understanding. And I was there, right? I didn't understand all these different possibilities, all the different things you can do, but these people not understanding the way these things actually work, right?
Yeah, I actually got a lot of comments like that too, saying that I took a spot from someone that could have been a future doctor and treating patients and yada, yada, yada. And there's so many things wrong with that, starting with like, hey, people can change their mind. It's not like it's a waste for you to go into this thing, change your mind, and then stay stuck in it because you feel like you're supposed to, because you'll be taking a seat away. That already is the premise, which is obviously nonsense. But that premise isn't even true because there are so many medical graduates and there are not enough residency seats. So the minute a residency seat opens up, especially in something very competitive like plastic surgery, then it's going to get filled up just like that. You're going to have a line of candidates who want to get into that field, right? And we have so many students every year who are going unmatched. And we have so many IMGs and FMGs that also want to come to the US. MDs, DOs, IMG, FMG. You're not taking anyone's seat if you do decide to leave and not practice clinical medicine. Don't let that be a deciding factor for you, because it just simply is not based in reality.
If I leave residency, right, that's a doctor that doesn't exist. We have a shortage of doctors, right? When that's not true. It's really not true at all, because that spot will be immediately filled up by someone who didn't get in the year before, or someone who wanted to transfer programs. So it's not kind of a,
There you go.
I am taking away a spot from someone else. It's someone else will get in. It's just kind of through these roundabout ways because it's so competitive and so many people want to do it. Two realizations really put it into place for me. But keep in mind, I already decided I was going to leave medicine. Number one is you can affect people and help people without actually physically touching them or talking to them. And number two, money isn't necessarily evil. It actually drives the majority, right, of these innovations, research, inventions, and medical things that go on to change the world for patients and people. HIV was transformed from a death sentence into a truly manageable condition, right, after investments from these investment companies. Hepatitis C was actually cured, and these drugs and life-saving interventions may never actually even have existed if it wasn't for these investments, this capital, to allow these studies to be run, to allow these trials to be made.
One of my favorite quotes is from Charlie Munger, and it's something along the lines of, if you show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcomes. And I don't think many people understand how powerful incentives are, and it just shapes everything in the world. Money is one incentive, but there are other types of incentives as well. And like even when I was creating Med School Insiders as an example, so one issue we saw in the industry, many of our early team actually came from other places in the industry, and we talked about the limitations in the industry, what we wanted to do better, things like that. And one of those strategies is, of course, optimizing incentives. If you have people incentivized so that their interests align, then you get much better outcomes. So in other words, how can you incentivize your team, your doctors, your tutors, your advisors to then give the students the outcome that the students want? Getting into med school, getting a higher MCAT score, higher USMLE score, right? Having better outcomes, more favorable outcomes. If you can incentivize that behavior, you're much more likely to actually achieve it. Look for incentives throughout your life, and you'll see how powerful they are. And if you do decide to pursue entrepreneurship, and if you ever do have a team, then make sure you incentivize them properly if you want to get the best out of them and have the biggest impact. And again, that's not just money. There are other ways you can incentivize people, but you show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome.
The idea is that you trust these investors, these people, this venture capital firm so much to make these decisions in a certain field that when they actually make these investments, they're going to make more than the regular people, more than the regular market of maybe like 8 to 10%.
I think part of the interesting thing about venture capital as well is that if you do get into entrepreneurship, you may find that you love the art of the start. So there's the beginning of a company is so exciting. There's all this possibility, this potential, a lot of strategy, a lot of things moving at a very high pace. And out of all the different companies I've started, the beginning is always the most exciting and intoxicating. And with venture capital, I've never done any VC work myself. I've done a little bit of angel investing, which is just a person investing their own money rather than other people's money. But the thing that I like about investing and advising in smaller, earlier stage companies is that it's that art of the start kind of energy all over again.
The next option is startups. So startups is when you work at kind of a very small firm. You probably have a lot of different roles, and it's very, very risky, right? So the thing could blow up, but also with the huge risk comes the huge upside, right? So if you have equity in the company and it does well, maybe it will explode and you'll do really well otherwise.
I have some friends who joined this small startup early in the day, and it eventually went public. That company was called Uber, and now they don't work. They're set for life.
And then, of course, you have the huge swath of these bigger or more normal companies. So these are things like Pfizer, Google, Walmart, and all these companies are doing is doing something that they're very good at, a product or service, and kind of working on that main thing. So instead of working with other companies, working with other people, working with other clients, it's mainly working on the one thing that is your niche, that is your area of expertise.
He mentioned Google. I feel like Google is more than just one product, and I think that's partially intentional because they don't want to be a monopoly on a search engine, right? So they actually have a lot of different services and products and things so that they my understanding at least is that so that they can have a stronger argument against certain types of monopoly.
However, again, I want to speak more to my situation, that I'm in a very, very lucky situation, right? My family paid for all of my education. I have no debt or anything like that. And YouTube and my book and some of these other things has helped me out immensely. So I don't really have many financial concerns, if any.
Kudos to Zach for acknowledging that. I think that is a huge leg up, and actually a pretty large proportion of med students fall into that category. It's more than just 1, 2, 5, 10%. I know at my school, it was actually roughly 25% at UC San Diego that had no loans at all. And that generally was coming from family contributions. But if you don't have family contributions, that's okay. For those who don't know, I paid for my own college, my own med school, my own laptop, my own, all these things, and that's okay. There are ways that you can position yourself. So as an example, when I was applying to med school, I was able to get all of my tuition and most of my living expenses covered. So that from med school, I took out, it was a little bit less than $20,000 in loans, which is really essentially nothing, very easy to pay off afterwards, right? Versus the average of more than $250,000, currently more than $260,000. And there are tactics you can use to increase your odds of earning these types of scholarships. Some of them are going to be full ride, all of your tuition, all of your living expenses. Some of them are going to be just your tuition. Some of them are going to be, $20,000, $40,000, $50,000 per year, every year, which adds up obviously quite a bit. And those are topics I cover elsewhere in other videos, and also things that our team helps students with when they are applying to med school, so that you can reduce that future cost, because any loans you take out are also going to accrue interest. So I didn't just save $200,000, I saved $200,000 plus interest by leveraging those tactics. And they are more advanced tactics. Not going to say that every student is going to be able to leverage those, but when you are able to leverage those, it gives you optionality. I would not have been able to leave plastic surgery, absolutely not, if I wasn't able to earn those merit scholarships and financial packages that incentivized me to attend that medical school, that then resulted in me having $20,000 in med school loans. So optionality is the key. That's one of the things that I really harp on, but having optionality is so powerful because you may change your mind about certain things in the future. There may be some emergencies or some changes in preferences, etc. Having optionality is a very powerful place to be.
Hi, doggy. Hi. And I talked about this before, right? But the paradox is that actually these selfish things for me are really quite unselfish, right? Because when I'm doing the selfish things, I find that the things I do actually help more people in a better way than the unselfish thing of maybe staying as a doctor or working in these classical jobs.
I think there's multiple sides to that argument, and you can make the argument for physicians having this deeper one-on-one longitudinal connection with the patient, having a profound impact versus having something that is, scaled and not as personal. They're both making an impact in different ways. There's no right or wrong here. It's really about which one you prefer and which one appeals to you, because there are a set of pros and cons with each.
And this isn't unique to me, right? I'm not inventing these principles. This is something that Steve Jobs says, Naval Ravikant says, Paul Graham says, and it's all about finding that unique curiosity. There's dogs going crazy around me. Finding these kind of unique things that kind of position you better than other people, what feels like play to you, but work to others. And then when I hopefully find this thing, right, because I'm so interested in it, because I excel to levels that maybe few other people can excel in, I'm also providing that much more of an impact, that 1% of 1% of an impact, of a value add to other people. So anyway, I'm in this extremely lucky position. And what I think about all the time is, what can I do that I like that also adds value to the world? And this is a very difficult question, right? This is probably one of the hardest questions, if not my hardest question of my entire life, right? What can I do that I'm interested in that also adds value to the world? But if I already had the answer, and this is why I left medicine, right? Because I knew this wasn't what I was interested in. I knew this wasn't what I liked doing. How can I speed up this process? How can I find this thing? Well, I just have to try a bunch of new things that I think might be interesting. And that's one of the reasons, if not the main reason, I went into consulting. And finally, the third part of this Venn diagram of, I guess, this life decision of what you're going to do, right, is how much time, how much ability are you going to have to actually live a life outside of work? And in medicine, in certain investing firms, in certain consulting firms, right, a lot of this time is spent working, and you just really have no time, or it feels like no time, to do like your own stuff. So in the end, that Venn diagram is what made the decision. It was based on financials, curiosity, and kind of living a normal life outside of the job.
My understanding of consulting is that it is very challenging and demanding, that the hours worked are not conducive to a healthy work-life balance. But I've never been in it. This is just what I've heard. And it sounds like Zach, at least where he's currently working, is having a better balance than perhaps the average consultant?
Consulting, the financials are great. The curiosity was the best, which is the reason I picked it. And then the time outside of the ability to have a life outside of it were like medium, but that was the rest of them too anyway.
Okay, so he's saying that the work-life balance is medium. Okay, it's not that it's great. It's just I misunderstood that part.
I would learn about business, be exposed to medical technology, pharmaceuticals, private equity firms, hospital systems. I could look into energy and mining and insurance if I wanted to, philanthropy, really anything I could think about, I could have a try or job or experience in.
I do like that point a lot, which is that through consulting, he's going to be getting a sampling, a buffet, a tasting of various different industries for if he does want to leave consulting in the future, where he wants to then spend more time and energy and go deeper. But even though consulting is a popular option, it's not something that I personally would do or feel that it's a good fit for me simply because there's a lot of that whole like bureaucracy and working in this hierarchy and needing to level up and the political game in the office settings that even in surgery, I felt that difficult personalities in a workplace setting can just make work a lot less pleasant, at least when you're interacting with those people and you don't always get to control who you're interacting with, obviously, in workplace settings. So maybe I care about that more than the average person. And I'm also more tolerant of risk or uncertainty or yada, yada. Entrepreneurship for me seems very appealing. That being said, Zach is also clearly also in entrepreneurship.
I think doing this hard work and going through these struggles, like they're not tearing me down so much, and I'm learning so many things. I'm being exposed to so many different people. So right now I feel like it's the right path, just maybe not in the right city.
I love New York City. I feel like it's one of the best world-class cities. New York, Tokyo, Paris, although I haven't been there in a long time. I hear things have changed there. Fantastic cities.
Most helpful things for me, right, was number one, having conversations with lots and lots of people. Number two, not following the path that you think is the right path because it's what everyone else is doing. That is not good, and the sunk cost fallacy will get you, and it'll get you hard here.
And it is really scary to start thinking for yourself and to not just follow a predetermined path. It's not for everyone. I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't. It's a very personal decision. But the first step I recommend is to educate yourself. YouTube, incredible. Find the videos from people that have navigated similar situations. We do a lot of reactions to doctors who are leaving and med students and things like that, but find other resources as well. And you can find a full playlist of all those videos down below. But of course, find other resources as well. Talk to other people in real life that have different life experiences. Like, you don't want to be the med student who is feeling a certain way, only talking to other med students about what the options are. You want to talk to the other people who were med students who then left and did something else, that didn't do residency, that maybe did consulting or something else, and talk to them about various options. And now with LinkedIn and various social media platforms, you can connect with just about anyone so easily.
Number three, when you start to evaluate these options, don't just evaluate the work and don't just evaluate what other people are saying. Try them for yourselves and really think critically about what you want to do and what you want to accomplish instead of just going with kind of, this is what I should do. This should, one of the most dangerous words that you can ever have when you're trying to figure out what to do. Number four, and this is what I'm doing right now all the time, is just try to hunt for that curiosity, that genuine thing that excites you, because the paradox is, again, or at least the paradox is with me, when you find the thing that's genuinely exciting, you'll commit that time to be that 1% of 1%, and therefore, as long as you're not like stealing from people or hurting people, you're going to have that 1% impact and value add to the world.
Zach, love your stuff as always. Let me know what you guys think with a comment down below. Much love. I'll see you in the next one.